this erosion of trust in our government, this idea that the government not only isn't working on our behalf, but doesn't even know what the normal day-to-day lives of American people are like. That doesn't know that it's almost impossible to have a student loan payment, a house payment, and a car payment on an average salary.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Before You Speak podcast, where we thoughtfully, or at least try to thoughtfully, deep dive into topics that we think are relevant for the times that we're living in. But before we do that, I am your host, Derek Peterson. And as always, we'll start by processing the fire hose of our news feeds. Well, I'll process the fire hose of my news feed with this guy somewhere. You're either above or over there.
On yours, I'm to the right or left. I don't know.
Right now, you're above me.
Oh, well, as I encircle Derek, I am Elwin, and right now the fire hose of my newsfeed has evaporated because it's like 100 degrees in Texas, and Texas summer is bullshit, and I fucking hate it.
You know, since I've been in Texas, I feel like it's slightly like when I first got to Texas in 2012, I feel like summer started like in April. And I feel like now summer doesn't really kick in full until July, but it goes all the way until November. Like it's still brutally hot in October. So like, we'll see. Like I'm not a huge fan of September sucks. Like everything is hot all the time. And it's my birthday month, and it's also when football starts. So, I feel like I'm sweating all the way through the month of September. So, but you probably had this also, but you've grown up in Utah, but growing up in New York, September rolls around, back to school, weather starts to drop. Maybe on a weekend, you're sitting outside and, need a sweatshirt and a blanket and maybe a fire. And here it's like, it still gets me. This will be my 11th September in Texas, and I know that I'm just going to be pissed on like September 20th when it's 98 degrees. I love Nick Lachey. Everybody tells me I look like him. So that was a 98 degrees joke, by the way, the boy band, in case all of our loyal listeners know.
It took me a
minute. Well, let's jump into the news. So Mitch McConnell, nobody knows where he's at. We still don't. I'm fully believing that he's in a coma or dead because, it's relatively simple to provide proof of life. And AI provides photos, and all of the photos that they have supplied have no metadata. So there's no way to actually know if the photos are real or not. And so, which is shady in and of itself. But if I'm being honest, my biggest frustration, we spoke about this a little bit as we were doing our podcast prep, is just that, if the roles were reversed, Mitch McConnell would have already replaced himself. So the Andy Beshear needs to make an executive decision, and in my opinion, just put somebody in. Because if you just put somebody in, then they're forced to provide proof of life. Then there's no way around it. They can't just say you can't do that. So in my opinion, the Democrats, this is like case in point about how the Democrats just are fighting a different fight. It's like we're ice skating and they're boxing. It's just like we're playing two different sports.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. Democrats are still trying to figure out the rules. And they haven't recognized that the Republicans are playing a different game.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I hadn't really thought what would happen if Beshear just was like, you know what? I believe that he's dead. And because I have that belief, and in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, I'm going to exercise my right to appoint someone else. And then they have to go to court and say, he doesn't have the right to do that. And then Beshear says, I don't know. I think I do. I think he's dead. Show me he's not dead. Right. And, this is the kind of story where it's like, it's a little bit funny enough, like the proof of life photo that they gave and all that stuff. Like there's this undercurrent of just like black humor to it. So I can't allow myself to be outraged about everything. especially when it comes to like Republican hypocrisy. But if I were to dive in, like it's right, this one's right on the line where it's like I'm just choosing not to let my outrage meter fly off the scale because
Yeah.
this guy, you're absolutely right. Mitch McConnell would have removed Mitch McConnell as senator already.
Yep.
There's no question about that, right? We have, and this, there's part of it that's not just Republicans. Democrats with Dianne Feinstein did the same thing. But like we have a system now where you can just be completely infirm and 90 something years old and still be a senator. And the loss of one senator is the loss of 1 out of 100, right? That's an important vote. So
Yep.
now Kentuckians don't have two senators. They have one. He's been in the hospital for 43 days now. No one has seen a live video. I think there's only been the one picture that came out of him where it's just like absolute proof of life with a newspaper in his hand and he's pointing to the date or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which is
so
also
he's not,
exactly how you would create a photo in AI if you were trying to provide proof of life. So the whole thing just feels like a setup. You know what I
and
mean?
it's ludicrous that's the position that we're in anyway, right? Like that a literal proof of life photo is what the McConnell camp felt was needed to slow the roll on this, right? That's
Yeah.
bonkers. If he can't get up in front of a camera and speak to us, then he's not fit to serve as a senator, and he shouldn't be in the Senate. And he's still getting paid. I'm sure he's made billions in other ways, but this motherfucker has spent 40 years voting against paid sick leave and any sort of worker protection that would help them if they get sick and keep their job in place should they get sick so that they don't go bankrupt as a result. And now he's in a coma or brain dead or whatever for 43 days, still employed. The Republican Party's just like,
Yep.
we love our
Yeah.
Mitch.
It, all of it is like, okay, so the photo that they provided is something that can easily be doctored with AI and artificial intelligence and still has no metadata on it. So if they really wanted to actually like fix some of this stuff, just provide a photo with metadata or a video like that shows the time, location, and timestamp from when they took it. Like, but
No, we need to see Mitch McConnell alive. We need to see him either walk or get wheeled to a microphone and speak words. Like
yeah,
absent that, at the very least, Bashir should be like, no, he's incapacitated. He can't serve. Right. It's not just like the joke of is he dead or not. It's also the like, no, he's got a job that he's not doing. And at some point, you just can't let someone. I mean, the Republicans did with Tom Kaine too. These guys just disappear for months,
yep.
and the Republican Party is like, oh, whatever. We don't really care because we
Has
don't
that
give a
guy
shit
ever
about
showed back
anything.
up?
Yes, he did actually. He had checked himself into a mental hospital for suicidal depression. So it's actually like a little sad, but still 4 months. Like, quit your job, man. Give up your seat.
Yeah. For real, like there's all of this stuff is, it feeds into all of this stuff is feeding us and like, I feel like funneling us towards what, I hope is actual change when all of this is done. Like the whole Trump experiment is just shown us like how flawed the system is. And I genuinely hope that the byproduct coming out of all of this is we don't end up all dead in World War III or under authoritarian regime. I hope that it's protections around democracy. And like we talked about in some of our early podcasts, codifying some of these norms and setting, term limits and age limits and actually kind of fixing the system, uprooting Citizens United, fixing, the money that infiltrates politics and ruins all of it. Like we don't have the people's best interest at heart anymore. We have whoever is paying the most money into it, and we're seeing that in real time in all of these primaries that are starting to kick off. Like, dude, if you're taking big PAC money now and it's like this is starting to work against you, like all the money that you're taking in, this is going to play out really interesting in this Michigan primary election with Abdul Sayed and what's her name, Amy
Haley Stevens.
or Haley Stevens. Yeah, it's interesting because one of them is heavily PAC funded, and the other one is not. And we're like, that election in and of itself, I think, whole is going to speak a lot to how the American people are viewing, money in our politics right now. And my hope is that the outcome of a lot of these elections is that, yeah, like grassroots campaigns start to take hold and come back a little bit more, and big money has less and less of an impact, because if we get enough people that have those viewpoints into the system, there's hope that we can actually eradicate all of that and get back to some normalcy. I would love again a time where I'm genuinely torn between voting for a Democrat and a Republican based on their policies and values. But right now it's just we're not even afforded that opportunity at the moment.
Well, yes and no. I mean, you can if we were in Michigan, the Michigan voters, they have the choice. They have the right to vote for a progressive Hassan Piker left backed, in the camp of Mamdani type Democrat, or a more centrist Democrat who they've known for a long time. Like they have that choice. Now, is there an incredible amount of money coming into one side that is attempting to weigh the scales? Yep, absolutely. And that is a problem, but it doesn't it doesn't really relieve us fully of choice, because in the primaries in particular, we do have that choice, and we're seeing that play out this year. It's what you
Yeah.
alluded to at the beginning. Uh, but I just, the money in politics has to change. Absolutely. Uh, I'm not sure if the primary system needs to exist anymore either, to be honest. You know, it just, it lends itself towards the most extremes on both sides. Right? How do we get extremist MAGA Republicans? They win a primary in a red district. And why are people freaking out about DSA candidates? Because, like, one of the ones in New York is like, no, we should absolutely abolish all police. There should be zero police. And she's going to be a congresswoman. She won the primary. So the primary system really lends itself to just the extremes of both sides. But money out of politics, like 6-week election cycle, whatever, shorten the shit up, take the money out of it as much as possible. I don't, returning it to normalcy. I think the risk that we run right now is apathy of the American people, right? And
Yeah.
a sense of disconnectedness, that's certainly there, where it's like the elected officials are not representing us at all. And how that plays out, we don't know. We've never
Well,
faced that in this country.
yeah, but the apathy, that's not going to be that's not going to hold. The apathy will change because life, I mean, I think over the last, 10 to 15 years, life hasn't gotten bad enough that people have actually thrown their arms up and really been an advocate for change. But dude, there's a world that we're headed that direction right now. Like, our stock market has been held up by a handful of AI companies and AI investments, and we're starting to see the cracks in that. There are people divesting from AI. AI is proving itself to be not only difficult to sell to the American people as far as data centers go, but the cost of acquisition, like, when you think about like a business, right? For me to acquire a client, if it costs me $250 per client for me to acquire based on ads and different things that I'm running, that's worth it based off of what I take home when I sell. For AI, once they acquire a client, they end up spending like 10x on that client more. And the infrastructure and the setup for AI is just not, it's not there. And they're still a long ways off from it being there. And so you couple the stock market potentially crashing on top of the war in Iran, gas prices, oil prices potentially hitting over $120 a barrel, which shoots up food prices and everything else. Like, we could see ourselves in a situation where people genuinely are fed up. I think apathy may not be the choice, coming up,
Well,
because we're headed down a pretty ugly path potentially.
no, I agree with you, but I think so. What I referenced at the end was we don't know where the apathy leads. It can
Hmm.
either lead to, revolution and
Well,
anger,
apathy got us
or
here.
yeah, but
Potentially.
or it could, I don't think it's too late. I don't know if the candidates exist, but I don't think it's too late for, smart candidates to come in and actually listen to what the American people are saying. The money in politics prevents that truly from happening in a lot of cases. But, if I do think that people in general they don't want to like engage in a revolution. So we're willing to back candidates that give us hope that we feel like are listening to us. It's why progressive candidates have been successful, because they're talking a language that a lot of the American people are like, yeah, no, this guy understands, or this lady understands my life, the problems in my life. And that means that she can, or he can, seek to fix those problems in government. And I think people want that, and they'll vote for that, and they'll keep their powder dry, both figuratively and literally, uh, if they feel that. So there's always that avenue also. Apathy will not reign forever, because at some point you have to eat.
Yeah.
And, if you can't eat, or you're 87 or 75, and you lost your retirement savings, and now you have to go, be a greeter at Walmart, uh, you or someone in your family is unlikely to remain apathetic for very long.
Yeah. Yeah, the money is the problem. We all know what the problem is, the root of the cause of all of this, and it's just going to take. And this is what is interesting about some of these DSA candidates, is that they're some of the few people that are actually talking about like ending all of this, and there's some of the few people that can, because they're not taking PAC money. So like that is the catalyst for a lot of this stuff, which is interesting to me. But we can
Well,
jump on that.
the money huge, but there's also a bubble that these folks live in. Like I just read yesterday, James Clyburn, who's a congressman from Georgia or South Carolina or something, he's been or Maryland. He's been in office for 40 something years, and he was just texting someone the other day. This came out with a screenshot of text that he only learned what ChatGPT was like last month. And honestly, I
How?
don't think, yeah, you can't, if you just learned what ChatGPT was last month, you cannot be legislating on behalf of us in 2026, period. Quit, resign your job. You do not have the knowledge. It's like me saying that I'm a real estate agent and I've never bought or sold a house and holding myself out as an expert.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be doing it.
Correct. That is 1,000% correct. You don't know anything about the very thing that's currently holding up the United States economy, and not even just the United States, the world economy at this point. It's insane. So, which the other thing that holds up the world's economy is oil, and we are still in the war in Iran. Is there anything we need to discuss here?
You know, I worry that the oil situation is actually really bad, and we just don't know it yet, right? If we look at the first time Trump sort of stopped this war, if you go back like 5 days before he said that, he had a meeting with all the CEOs of the major oil companies. And what reporting has come out of that, and there's not a ton, but what reporting has come out of that, all said that those CEOs were like, dude, we are in trouble. Like we are like the oil's about to stop coming into dock. This is a major, major problem. We don't have enough oil. We are running out, and we are running out fast. You have to figure this shit out. And since then, it's been like open, closed, open, closed. The nut of it is he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't care about what he's doing. It's the biggest foreign policy mistake and self-own, certainly in our country's history, maybe in world history. I have no idea if like the Greeks or Romans did similarly stupid shit 2,000 years ago, but
If they
you
did, it's
know,
probably what ended their civilization.
no doubt about it. No doubt
Yeah.
about it. Right. So, it's people are not talking that much about Iran anymore, because we all know, like, all right, great, he's making threats again. Like now the Iranians know when he says he's going to bomb them all back to the Stone Ages, he's not. going to, so it's all bullshit. And they can just, now the Yemenis are fucking up the Red Sea. Like, I just think that at some point, my worry is that, and it's going to happen very quickly, that people are going to be like, no, we're out of oil. We have like 3 weeks left of oil, and it's too short of a timeline to do anything about it.
Yeah. You know what else is crazy is I was just listening to the Pod Save America guys talk about how somebody was, I think in Congress, they were asking someone, and I don't remember exactly who, about the Venezuela oil. And there's been something like $3 billion worth of oil that's come out of Venezuela that's completely unaccounted for. Like, and nobody will answer the question of where, like, what happened and where did it go? Which is exactly what all of us were saying prior to them going into Venezuela, was like, this is an oil grab for someone, and we're going to do a bunch of shady shit's going to happen as soon as all of this transpires, which is exactly, there's a bunch of people getting wealthy off the books, and everybody else is and they used our military as the means to do it, which is complete horseshit. The only people that should be benefiting from any of that, which, to be quite frank, is no one. None of us should be benefiting from the Venezuela oil unless it's sold to us, in my opinion. But
Except for Venezuela.
except for Venezuela, correct. But at this point, once it's done, the American people who fund our military should be the ones that are benefiting from it. So it's infuriates me, but also par for the course with everything that's been going on with this administration, which is just the most corrupt bullshit that we've ever seen. And that's not even getting into the worst of it, which is the crypto stuff.
I don't know anymore how you can just look at the news that is well reported. Like, if you pay 30 minutes of attention a day to the news, and not CNN, really, like to actual news, I don't really know how you can come to any conclusion other than there is a group of folks, and this sounds like the most anti-Semitic Jew hate thing anyway. I just don't think that the folks are Jewish, right? But that our entire world is being controlled and gamed by, like, I don't know, 50 people,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Because I'm expanding Trump's circle to include his sons, and then his sons, Jared Kushner, right? It'd probably get to 50 people. But, like, when you see Peter Thiel, like, decamping to the mountains of Argentina, and Elon Musk is a Bond villain at this point, right? And Donald Trump doing his shit. How can you not conclude that the entire system, that they're taking the oil for themselves, that Peter Thiel has some fucking bunker, or he bought a mountain and he's storing barrels of oil for himself, which sounds ludicrous, but why not? Right?
Yeah.
Everything else is so completely gamed and rigged. There's no transparency. There's no visibility on anything. The crypto shit is a giant mess, right? Everything is a grift, and everything is done for the power of those in power. So how do you not become like, okay, cool, we're living in a Glass Onion movie where Ed Norton is on some island somewhere? Feels like that's really close to true.
It is really close to true. And you know what's interesting? Like, Kushner and the Trump kids have gotten into bed with some people that do not mind killing other people, including the Saudi Arabians and pretty much half the Middle East. And dude, when Trump is gone, and this has been my sentiment from the last few months since we've been talking about it, is that this claw for power for the Trump kids, like, the only play I see in all of this is that they have to run Eric or Don Jr. For president, because if the Trumps lose power, that their family is screwed. Like, in some ways, like, Trump pulls the strings, right? And so when you lose that power in the United States, like, what is the benefit to having the Trump kids around? And to be quite frank, I don't think the Trump kids are Trump. I don't think that they're going to garner the kind of attention and persona that he has historically. Doesn't work like that. So to be honest, I think they're fucked when all is said and done in all of this. If one of them does not gain some kind of political power in all of this, so I mean, we'll see, because Democrats take control if at some point, or even JD Vance, like, I don't see JD Vance being able to
Yeah,
call
but
shots like Trump does.
who's going after the Trump kids, right? So let's say in JD Vance certainly isn't. So forget about that. Forget
Anybody
about
that gets
any.
anybody that got screwed over in a deal, leveraged by the Trumps, which in
They
secrecy.
they have they have so much money now that it doesn't matter. And like, do I? The only, I guess, scenario where I could see what you're talking about making any sense is like, you know, what's his name? MSB, Mohammed MBS, the Saudi
Yeah,
Arabian
MBS.
guy,
Yeah,
that he like fucking chops them up like he chopped up the reporter. But honestly, I think they've amassed so much money and so much wealth now that no matter what, they'll just be like, great, there's a sweet apartment for me in Saudi Arabia. There's an Albanian island that I bought. They just have too much money, and I don't trust the Democrats at all to be like, no, we're throwing you fuckers in jail. That
yeah,
to me is what needs to happen. They're all criminals and they should all go to jail. And other countries do this. South Korea, their president last year tried to basically commit a coup, right? The parliament fought back. There's video of like the opposition leader climbing over the walls of the parliament building to get back in and cast the vote. He cast the vote. He kicked the guy out of office. They arrested him like 6 weeks later, and now he's been sentenced to life in prison in a year. This can be done. This can be
yeah,
done. We just in this country have no will. We've never had the will to do it. And it goes
yep,
back to Gerald Ford. It probably goes back before then. But until one party has the political will to say, these are criminals who did crimes and I'm arresting them. And if you think I'm a criminal that did crimes, come arrest me too. And if I see a Democrat that's done it, I'm arresting them too. But this
yep.
shit has to end. And that's the
Has
only
to.
way it ends, because the more it stays like, well, harmony and unity, and now we're in power and we don't want to blah, 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 lawfare, bullshit. The fucking lawbreakers have to go to jail. And no party in this country has shown a willingness to do it.
Yeah. And I think we're headed towards a place where the American people are going to there's a world where this gets bad enough that the American people are going to require that of their elected officials in the future. But we'll see. I mean, it happened in Brazil, right? The Bolsonaro ended up
Yep.
getting arrested. So like there are other countries pulling it off. So, well, let's end our news topic, our news segment for today there, which it went in a couple different, but probably needed.
It was
That was a
fun.
good conversation. Yeah. So today we are going to talk about are we funding a surveillance state for ourselves in general? And so I think important to start off is, what, and I'll let you kind of field this first question, is what would a surveillance state be?
Well, surveillance state can encompass an awful lot of different things, right? But I think for purposes of our discussion, we're talking about ways that we are watched, yes, but also ways that our world is molded based on what the watchers see. So, and there is a balance, right? Traffic cameras, for example, right? Like, we don't have them in Texas. They have them in a lot of other states. Are they useful in preventing traffic deaths? Yeah, I actually think that they are. Is there an argument about freedom, which is the argument Texas made, that nope, if you want to catch me speeding or running a red light, you have to actually catch me running a red light? Yeah, I think that's an argument to be made too. I don't necessarily think that so much as the surveillance state that we're talking about. I think we're talking about data. I think we're talking about honesty and transparency with that data. And I think that we're talking about things like surveillance pricing. So, how are we tracked by companies, by governments? What is done with our data? What do governments do with our data? What do companies do with our data? Do we know what they're doing with our data? And then why did my airplane ticket just go up $87 in an hour?
Yeah. And it's interesting because like historically, you know, most surveillance things start with convenience. Um, like they solve a problem, and so then we, as they solve that problem, people become more and more willing to give up more and more information. Like I remember this, right? You remember in the early 2000s when a website required you to put in a credit card, and you're like, whoa, that's a step too far. I'm not putting my credit card in there. Who knows what you're going to do with that, right? And now it takes about 15 seconds for our phone to auto populate a credit card into
People
a
send me
blank.
pictures of their credit card over text.
Yeah. For whatever reason to purchase or, you know, pay for your membership. So, you know,
Yeah.
we've gotten to a place like, so things typically start with convenience. But I think the question on whether like, so what point does convenience begin to shift and the use of those things becomes data that can be used against us?
I think it, like on a society level, if I understand the question, which is, when does it become this data collection is not being used for convenience anymore? It's gone past that and it's going now to just why do they need all this stuff? What are they doing with it? I don't know what that point is, but I know we're past it. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly where that was, but we're past it by years and years and years. Uh, I think why I paused before is like, where does it, there's also an individual question there, which is, what's our comfort level
Yeah.
with giving up, with being surveilled? Uh, so, but I think the answer to your first question comes down to trust. I think that the party that's collecting the data, we're likely to allow it more if we trust them. So,
Hmm.
Apple and Google, these companies are actually historically quite good at protecting data. When it comes now, I'm going to put a caveat in there, like tracking apps and shit like that. I'm sure they're terrible with that. I'm sure they don't care. Right. But
Yeah.
when it comes down to like law enforcement wants to know where I was and they want to track my cell phone, tracking the GPS of my cell phone to find that, Apple and Google historically are really, they fight quite hard against that. The government has to make a showing. So, is there a trust in a company like Apple? There must be because people are sending me pictures of their credit cards. And they've done that without incident, right? Messages, Apple is quite a secure system. So I think that's the key. Like, do we trust our government right now to collect data? I I would guess if we ran a poll, it'd be 80-20 minimum that no, we do not. Uh, did we 5 years ago? Probably more than we do now. I think COVID probably really fucked with our trust in government in a lot of different ways. But the answer to that question, I think, comes down to just who is collecting the data and for what purpose. The other problem with government collecting data is like, why exactly is the government collecting data on me at all? It's
Yeah.
like that's a legitimate question to ask. I opt in to Apple collecting my data. I know when I don't read the 37-page user agreement that what I'm not reading is all the ways they're going to use my data.
Yeah.
Uh, So I'm opting into that, but am I opting into the government tracking my whereabouts? No, not really.
Yeah, and this is something that we see currently happening. So like there was a situation in Texas and they have these license plate readers from a company called Flock that are now placed. I think there's thousands there might be over like hundreds of thousands of them across the country, but there was a story that was just came out about a woman last year that was leaving Texas to get an abortion, and they queried over 83,000 cameras to track her car, leaving state lines to do that. And we're seeing this more and more. You couple that with like remember during the Super Bowl this year, they had that ad for Ring cameras where if your dog got lost, they could, you know, identify by looking at everybody's Ring cameras. And that ended up actually getting a bunch of pushback. And, you know, these flock cameras are getting pushback as well right now. There's some hilarious videos going around the internet of a guy that's basically teaching people how to dismantle them. And
Oh,
then people
nice.
are, yeah, and then people are reposting them like jokingly saying like, you should never, if you see a flock camera, ever do anything like this guy is teaching you step by step how to do. Wink, wink, which is
Right.
hilarious.
Well,
But yeah, I
also
mean,
you have law enforcement officers in Florida are, I don't know if it was flocked, but it was, one of them was just arrested. He ran into a woman once and he wanted to date her or something. He got her license plate and he followed her. He had like 400 different inquiries about where he was following her in real time, where she was going in real time so that he could create interactions with her. Right. And then, so that was like, everybody was like, oh my God, this is awful. And then that died down. Now it's like, oh, there's actually 20 more law enforcement officers in that area that are doing something similar. So yeah, it's disgusting what they can do. And it has nothing to do, it's anathema to freedom. We use that word a lot, but like, yeah, being tracked at every traffic light, man, that's some dystopian shit. I mean,
well, and that's
not good.
where, yeah, and that's where this conversation comes up, right? Because like, if we uh, as we've gotten more and more comfortable with the convenience of our lives and being tracked, you know, like our cars got broken into last year, and in my driveway, somebody just went through the center console, ran off with a bunch of our stuff. So, you know, we have 3 Ring cameras on the front of our house. So that we did that as a byproduct of security. Like I want to catch the fuckers that are digging through my car and trying to steal shit because it makes me feel unsafe. So like I'm giving up, I'm giving up, maybe some privacy for the the feeling of safety by using these Ring cameras. Now, if these Ring cameras are used for political purposes, like if somebody disagrees with this podcast, for example, and then uses these Ring cameras to find out where I live, like that's a situation where I'm completely not comfortable with it. And I think that the part of all of this that we really have to wrestle with and struggle with is like where are the lines and what are the consequences of using these technologies against the American people? And part of my fear in all of this, and is that are we already too far gone? Like, are companies like Palantir and some of these companies that have contracts with the government, with the military, will they be able to use this data to potentially in the future go after people that disagree with them politically? Like this is the fear and the path that we're on, right? Is the party in power can then eliminate or use tracking this data as a fear tactic to put people in under their oppression or make them scared enough to never do anything about it.
Well, that's already happened, right? That's the Texas abortion case.
Yeah.
That's a purely politically driven uh, instance designed to create fear and punish someone for doing something that the party in power doesn't think they should be able to do. I think that one of the differences with flock cameras and some of the other stuff is no one has been able to sell anybody on the benefit to us from flock cameras, from cameras like that. No one. Right. And that's why that ad was it. I think it was Flock and Simply Safe or something like that in the Super Bowl. Right. And the
Yeah.
backlash was so big that within 14 days, the partnership that they were advertising, they they discontinued, they disbanded it because everybody watched that and they were like, "Fuck no, I don't want you to be going into my camera to find someone's lost dog. Get the hell out of here! Like I want my Nest camera, my Ring camera, for the reason that you exactly just described. I do
Yeah.
not want someone to be able to access it without my knowledge or permission. I'll go through the video and I'll give you the video if I want to, right? But we know from the Nancy Guthrie case, Savannah Guthrie's mom, when she was kidnapped, there was this kind of kerfuffle online about how she didn't have the Nest Premium service that would have recorded everything the camera saw for like 14 or 30 days. And there are people like, this is why I always pay for Nest Premium, blah, 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 blah. This is such an incredible safety thing. You have to have it. And Nest is sitting there like, yeah, guys, she didn't pay for it. We can't give you the video. Like, she had to pay for it. And then 30 days later,
They
what's the
have the
headline on
video.
the head lead story on the news is they have the video and they're like, well, we were only able to find it by going through layers of this and layers of that. And it's like, no one believes you. No one believes that. If you believe that for a second, I got a bridge to sell you, because of course they know where to find that data, right? They've been selling this stuff for years. It wasn't like, oh my God, Savannah Guthrie's mom got kidnapped. Let's overturn every stone to see if somehow that data, that image is still in our system. No, they knew exactly where to look. They just wanted enough time to pass where people would forget about the first debate and they could lock in all their subscribers. So,
I was going to say, I'd be
yeah,
curious how many subscribers they that upgraded their plans after that case was went national. I'd be really curious to see that data.
yeah. So I think that it does tie back. We're willing to accept a lot of this stuff. I think most of us now recognize the convenience of this guy, of the phone, of the internet, of GPS in our cars is so valuable and so much a part of our everyday life that we accept that we're giving up, you know, ourselves, our privacy a little bit, that we're allowing ourselves to be tracked. But tracking is not surveilling. Surveilling is a more active and insidious thing. So when it comes to like live following the real-time whereabouts of just an innocent woman who has no idea what's going on, or tracking someone who's leaving the state to get an abortion, that is surveillance, and that is dangerous. And I don't think anybody agreed to sign up for that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, Ring cameras and Nest cameras are owned privately, right? But flock cameras are installed by government. And the flock cameras are different because they're license plate readers. They're meant to be license plate readers. That's what they're designed for. But the sell to communities and, city councils and places that installed these was that, this prevents, this allows us to track stolen cars, and this allows us to track kidnappings, and this allows us to do, basically prevent crime. Like it was they were installed by a government to make people feel safe. And again, like just a complete misuse of the technology and the lack of trust. And it took was a couple of these cases to start to really, this might actually be, the flock cameras were getting, I'd seen videos about people talking about how awful it is that we're being surveilled. But this Texas case, I think, is really starting to fire people up a little bit about it. But I mean, ironically, the people that are the most have historically been against the, no surveillance, we're not in 1984 or whatever, were the MAGA Republicans. And they're also the ones that are the most likely to be cheering on the fact that the government used that data to track somebody that was getting an abortion. So it's people are against it unless it's in most circumstances, and until it's these people would be for it until it's used against them, essentially.
Well, and their argument in response would be like, I'm not doing anything that the government would need to do this for, would need to
Yep.
surveil me for, which is just fucking good for you, right? Like it's an argument that's like so shallow that it, but so effective to people also, right? We still hear it all the time. Like, well, I don't care. I'm not doing anything that would get me in trouble. It's like, good. I'm glad you're a good citizen, but like part of freedom is the choice to roll the dice and run a red light, roll the dice and travel out of state to get an abortion. That's all part of freedom. When I make that choice,
Yeah.
catch me.
Yeah.
My bet is that I won't get caught. If I get caught, I'll pay the fine. I'll go to jail if I committed a crime. But like, you know, no, there's a certain pact we make, and then, just tell them that the Democrats are going to use that data to, I don't know, look at their IRS returns or something like that, and the whole argument falls apart.
Well, the argument has already fallen apart. Actually what spawned this conversation and what made me bring this up was I was watching a news story about a woman in Colorado that flock cameras had picked her car up on around the same time that there was a package pirate stealing packages off people's doorstep, and it was a older blonde woman, and the woman that was stealing packages happened to be an older blonde woman, and they found this data in the flock cameras picked up her car, and the police came to her house and I don't know if they arrested her, but it was a weeks process of like 2 or 3 weeks of her having to prove that it was not her, and that it was she had to use Ring camera from her house and Ring camera from other people's footage to prove that the flock cameras were wrong, that she was, yes, in that area because she lived there, but it was actually another blonde woman that was stealing those packages. So like, this data can be used against us. Like, there's going to be a lot of situations that come up that wrong place at the wrong time, and the most concerning thing about this for me is that the people that will be the worst affected in all of this are Black people, because they're like, well, you're Black, you were in the area, and we tagged your license plate when this crime was going on. So yeah, end of story. We're doing no more investigation beyond that. And it's like, this is completely messed up. So,
Yeah.
and that's what terrifies me about all of this, is just that we're headed down a path that could be we've given up enough of our conveniences that, we've funded and agreed to the self-monitoring that could be something that potentially erodes our society.
Yeah. The thing, it's like, for me, it doesn't even amount to fear, where it's just like, it's just obvious that this is all a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like that story you just said, it's just obvious that this stuff can fall into that, the possibility, the mere possibility that this could be used by, a rogue or a bad actor in government is so obvious that why does the discussion go beyond that? It's like meta glasses, right? Like meta glasses, I think now are finally kind of, last I read, they're a little bit, they're struggling, struggling with the meta glasses. Like, this is, I think, the third time now
Yeah.
that camera glasses are failing. And the reason why is because nobody wants somebody walking around wearing a pair of glasses, taking pictures of them and filming them without their knowledge, and like disrobing them with some AI thing without their knowledge, right? Nobody fucking wants that. That's just surveillance on an individual level, right? So, and it's obvious to people that that's bad and that we don't want that, but somehow, I guess because it's government and it's hidden behind a bunch of layers, right? We've allowed it to get to the point now where these things are happening and we have to fight back. And it does seem like, by and large, communities are fighting back
Yeah.
against Flock.
But we're already like we're one step away from military use being used
Sure.
against us as surveillance. I mean, it already is happening.
I believe it's already happening.
Yeah, they've already shown that ICE is using flock cameras to track immigrants. So we're literally a half step away before ICE is, tracking a Democrat for just like that the Republicans are starting to track all the Senate Democrats and all the House, Democrats, to find out if they're ever doing anything wrong so they can make a public mockery of it. Like we're so close to all of this stuff.
We're not a half step away from the capability. We're a half step away from that use case.
Yeah.
But the capability is there. I feel certain that Palantir, if Donald Trump called up Peter Thiel and was like, "Hey man, give me all you got on Derek and Ellen," it would be 20
be done.
minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000% correct. So, is there anything we want to leave with on a hopeful note here? Or is this just all? I mean, I don't know that there is a.
No, it's all
I
shit. It's all shit. But I want to talk also about surveillance pricing because I
okay,
think this gets into a little bit of like, what do we believe our government should be doing? Like, what do we believe the role of good government is? And surveillance pricing is a real thing. And it's this idea that algorithms, programs are watching your buying habits, watching your browser, where you're browsing from, what you've done in the past, what you've bought in the past, in order to figure out what is the most you'll pay for an item. And probably, I feel like the example that most people know of with this is you're looking for an airline ticket, so figure, all right, tonight we're going to buy tickets for our next trip, and you start searching, and then you go have dinner, and you come back, and you're like, wait, this ticket just went up $87, right? Like, oh my God, we better buy this. These seats are selling out. That's why it's going up. Nope, not at all. They know that you came back because you're looking back at that flight, and they know that based on all sorts of data, they can now increase that price a certain amount. Uh, this is a thing that happens. This is not like tinfoil hat type shit. So, okay, why did I say this about good government? Shouldn't government regulate this? Like, isn't this something, to me, this feels like something that government should be passing a law saying you can't do this. Set a price. That's the price, right? You don't get to just follow somebody and rip them off because you have data that indicates that the price you originally set was too low. No, that's your problem, right? We
yeah,
need to protect the consumer from being skinned for an extra $100 on those tickets. I just bought tickets. We're going to see Noah Khan tomorrow, Bianca and I. And so I had to buy them on StubHub because they sell out in a day. And the whole time I was like, are these going to go down? Or do they know that I keep looking? And, so I'd go to different sites. And now I'm like, oh, now they have my data again. Like, this is something that an organization, an agency like the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, the CFPB, should be able to do, should be able to help consumers by passing regulations and or laws that prevent companies from doing this. And I don't think that that is an unfair ask of government. And I don't think that, well, I believe that when I consider what government exists for, it's that type of thing. It's to protect an individual against the power and money of a company that can spend whatever, $20 million putting in place that program that's going to be leveraged against millions of us, and it's going to make them millions more dollars. I don't have the money to fight that or to know that it's there or to know how to get around it, right? But I know it's there and I know it's costing me money, and good government should be able to help me with that. And I think that it's kind of this little place where we can say, good government goes beyond keeping roads paved and goes beyond, upgrading infrastructure and upgrading hospitals. There are agencies that exist like the Clean Air Act that help us breathe clean air and Clean Water Act and that protect us from companies who are just trying to rip us off. Uh, but we're not having that conversation because I don't know, because MAGA and Trump and because feckless Democrats. But I do think a lot about what do we define, how do we define our government? And I feel like this is an interesting place to be like, no, I define government as an entity that learns this is going on and finds a way to stop it because in doing so, they're protecting their constituents.
yeah. You're 1,000% correct. And even when government has done that, it gets turned over, right? Like, cause remember, I think it was the Biden administration that put in the forced, one click cancellation policy for subscriptions because people were getting
Yeah.
charged. And then you can one click to sign up for a subscription and they make it a giant fucking circus to cancel. And so the Biden administration put in a one click cancellation policy and the Trump administration ended it. They backtracked all of it as soon as he got in because their interests are corporations and people funneling money to the campaign. And, all of this entire conversation points back to one thing is that our leadership and government is eroding the trust of the American people. And as they erode trust, their surveillance and their need to control us increases because unrest will become a thing. And we're, like I said, I don't think we're that far from this stuff really mattering to people. And my hope is that we have politicians that are going to be more open and talking about all of this stuff, because it's important. We want to see criminals prosecuted. We want to see freedom in America. We don't want to be surveilled. We want government that works for the people and actually, prevents people from screwing us over on a large scale, so we can buy concert tickets and not feel like we're getting gouged or a flight at every turn. But when our government is serving corporations, it just doesn't work, and it can only work like this for so long before people lose their mind. And at least I'm getting close to that, so I'm assuming other people are either already there or getting close to it too. But so now, who are we telling to shut the fuck up to today, Owen?
It's kind of in line with a lot of what we're talking about. We are telling centrist Democrats and mainstream media to just shut the fuck up about the DSA, about the Democratic Socialists of America. Just shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. You're fucking everything up. Okay? Look, there are policies that people in the DSA support that don't work and that are bad politics, like abolishing the police, right? Defunding the police, things like that. That's a terrible, stupid policy. I get it. Okay. But alongside that terrible, stupid policy is universal health care, is, universal pre-K, is allowing people to go to work while they're raising their kids or allowing people to afford childcare while they're raising their kids. It's housing reform so that people can buy a home and create generational wealth. It's student loan reform so that people can go to college, and because of some sickness that I don't know what it is. I don't know who hurt James Carville, who hurt Jamie Harrison, the former Senate committee leader for the Democrats, where they see, a couple of DSA candidates win in New York and they're like, get these people the fuck out of my party. If these people are in my party, I don't want to be in my party. Dude, shut the fuck up. Then you leave because you're the problem, not them. Okay. Because there's a reason they're winning. And that reason is kind of everything we've been talking about. This erosion of trust in our government, this idea that the government not only isn't working on our behalf, but doesn't even know what the normal day-to-day lives of American people are like. That doesn't know that it's almost impossible to have a student loan payment, a house payment, and a car payment on an average salary. That housing is too expensive, that car insurance, that childcare, that, my God, health insurance. We were looking at health insurance. It was going to be $2,800 a month. $2,800 a month. Are you fucking serious? That's okay, we're not buying health insurance. We're just rolling the dice. Not paying $34,000 a year for a product that I hope to never use. That's 2 Porsches in my driveway that I will use every day, right? That I can't afford because I don't have $2,800 a month. The government doesn't know that this is the problem that American people face. And the American people are like, bro, who's listening? And there's the DSA going, we see it. We're your age. We've come up in the same way that you've come up. We're living in the same world that you've come up in. And no, you don't. There's a long, long way between saying the DSA is awful and has to go and throwing your arms against everything that the DSA stands for and saying this is now who we are. And the mainstream Democrats and the media are just like ignorant of that fact. They're like, oh, well, these people are winning. Therefore, that is now the Democratic Party. So you, normal, moderate Democrat who's probably good on a lot of things and sees this, are you going to disavow the DSA? Is that what you're going to do? How are you going to win elections? The Michigan senatorial election is a really interesting one. That primary is a really interesting one. Who is electable, right? Is a centrist Dem that doesn't get it electable, or is a DSA person unelectable, right? Make the Republicans make that argument. Why the fuck are we fighting, right? Find candidates that can win, period, right? You don't get to argue whether DSA policies are good or bad in any meaningful way if you don't have power. Get power. and let the fucking crazy person from New York put up her defund the police bill and let it lose in committee because she's the only one that votes for it, right? Have that conversation when you have power. Find the people that can win. Don't shit on them because you don't like everything that they're saying. If they can win, get them in, period. Then have that conversation. And stop, when I keep putting in the media, like, stop bringing on 3 fucking Republican Congress people to tell your supposedly mainstream audience on CNN that the DSA is terrible. Of course, the mainstream people the Republicans are going to think that the DSA is terrible. What the fuck are we doing? Right? That's not honest reporting. That's having an agenda and setting a guest list that will meet that agenda. So all those people need to shut the fuck up and let the primary voters tell you who can win or not. And if Abdul El Sayed wins the primary and gets wiped out in the general, well, then if you're a Democrat in Michigan, you can say, look, you motherfuckers, we had someone who could win and we lost. But if you're Mamdani and you have a 70% approval rating in New York, you can say, look, motherfuckers, my shit works. That's the conversation that we have to have. But if we didn't learn, the first time we did this was 2016 with Bernie Sanders. They pushed him out. They didn't give his platform a position to be aired. And when you do that, you make the people who follow that platform furious. And then they don't vote for Kamala Harris. They don't vote for Hillary Clinton, and you lose to Donald Trump, right? We see this with free speech and on the Democrats also. If you tell people what they can and can't say, they're going to break the other way to the party that says, say whatever the fuck you want. We don't care, even though there's a bunch of awful shit being said, right? The Democrats can't figure out that the more they talk about the shit that they don't like, the more they push the people who do like that away, and they make it harder to win. So, moderate Dems, when it comes to DSA, shut the fuck up. Say that you're monitoring what Mamdani in New York is doing because he's the most real world laboratory experiment going on for some of these policies, and that you're watching it closely, right? And that, no, you don't think that defunding the police is legitimate, but there are a lot of things about childcare and healthcare and public works that the DSA does stand for that are putting in play, and you're really curious how that's going to work. Answer the question that way. Otherwise, shut the fuck up.
Fist bump it. This is a
Boom.
good one. Yeah, dude, I'm so annoyed with how I'm so annoyed with how well Republicans can deflect from terrible policy so easily, and Democrats just fumble their asses over it like it's the first time they've ever heard it, and it just drives me insane. I'm like, man, if you can't debunk somebody arguing that all DSA candidates want to, not have prisons, go fuck yourself. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
Yeah.
So like we literally watched Donald Trump deflect and jump through every hoop when he was disregarding Project 2025, only for them to get in and
do exactly that.
Do exactly that. And I'm like, it drives me insane to see how poor the democratic leadership is in our country, while the policies are actually the ones that serve the people. And it's like, how in God's name did we get here? How in God's name did we get to a place where the right policies are thwarted so easily because the people that are spouting them cannot just get through like basic objections? It's like, have you never sold a fucking thing in your life? Like, God, like a car salesman could handle this better.
That's right. Hey, interviewer, abolishing prisons and defunding the police is a terrible idea. I don't support it. And if that ever comes up in committee, I will vote against it, period. There's no gray on my position on this. But I think that universal health care is really important. And this person stands for universal health care, and they won their primary in another state that I'm not in because that's all the only people who are doing this. So, I'm glad that we might have another ally on that. Meanwhile, Andy Biggs, the Republican candidate for governor in Arizona, has been saying batshit crazy Nazi level stuff for a decade. And the answer is always, I didn't see the tweet.
That's exactly. I'm like, God damn it. Like, how do we, the playbook is all in front of us. It's just Democrats refuse to read it. So it's fine. Like, yeah, maybe we end up here. But I will say, I watched a little bit of like some clips of that, Abdul Sayed and Haley debate, and I do think Abdul Sayed is actually doing some of this stuff, like actually, staying on course, debunking, dumb attacks, and like, look, I'm not gonna give that more fodder than it needs because it's not where I stand, and that was encouraging to see. So we'll see. Interesting time coming up, but
if Abdul El Sayed was named Mike Smith, this would not be a close primary.
Correct. Yep. Correct. What are we talking about next week, man?
Do we want to talk about isms? We had talked about that before.
We should, and that is something that needs to be discussed. Are we picking one at a time, or are we talking about all of them?
Nah, I mean, I think we should do fascism/communism and capitalism. I think we could do them all at once.
Do them all at once? All right, those are some pretty big topics. Let's see how this goes. So stay tuned next week, y'all, for our isms conversation. So, and until
the
next
good thing
week,
is nobody can define any of that shit, so we can pretty much say whatever we want.
Unless one of us ever runs for a political seat, then these clips are going to fall all over the place. I mean, like, this guy doesn't know.
Fascist.
You see what Owen Hutter thinks fascism is?
Yeah.
All right, we'll see y'all next week. Take care.
Yeah.